Hey everybody, I am actually at Z-Max Dragway. Kate Dillon here, and I am standing with Megan Meyer. And Megan, tell us a little bit about your racing program.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me on today. So we are here at Z-Max, like you mentioned. It is the NTK Nationals this weekend, and today is Friday, so it's the first day of the race. We've already ran one qualifying run today, and we'll run a second one tonight before we'll do eliminations starting tomorrow. So this is the NHRA race. This is the National Series, and we run the National and Regional Series for NHRA. And so we are just about to close up the season for this year, and fortunately we are leading points right now. So hopefully we get the win at the end of this weekend on Sunday and keep that points lead going on to the end of the year.
Great, and tell me about the kind of car that you drive.
I have a top alcohol dragster, which is behind me, and we actually have two on our team. So we have two drivers here this weekend, Mia and Julie, and it is what we run on 95% nitro, 5% alcohol, which is why we are in the top alcohol dragster class. And it is really cool because there's a mix of dragsters in our class. You can have a blower on it, you can be naturally aspirated like we are. So it's really cool to be diversified in this class, whereas other types of classes in NHRA, they aren't. It's almost exactly the same thing you see. So there's so many different ranges of speeds that go on in our class, but we do run the full quarter mile. And we typically run at about 5 1/4 seconds and a quarter mile, about 270 to 280 miles per hour. And I do hold the record for the fastest female at 285 miles per hour.
Ooh, I love that. I love that. And of course, being at the track, none of this happens without a few dollars behind you. So I know you've been very successful at finding sponsorship, and of course on Winning Motorsports Marketing we talk about getting sponsorship for your race car. So what would be some tips you would have for someone who's just getting started with looking for sponsorship for their race car?
Well, like we just talked about just before we started recording, it's make it all about the sponsor, and that's usually the first thing that I also say when I'm talking to someone else. You want to go to a sponsor knowing about who they are, who they're trying to reach, and what type of problems they have. So you can go to them educated and tell them you can reach this audience that they're trying to reach, and you can solve this problem for them. And that's just an immediate yes that you will get. So do your research. Be consistent on social media, know your numbers, whether it's Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, whichever channel you want to use. Be consistent on it and know the amount of followers that you have, the demographics, stuff like that. So you know your information when you do go to a sponsor. Also, I would say it's about exposure, but it's also about activation. So you can see NGK is all over our rig. It's on my shirt right now, the car, it's everywhere. But it's more than just seeing the logo, it's also about the activation. So what we did last night was actually we had some Camrys, some Toyota Camrys, and NHRA allowed us to race them on the track last night, just going to 8th mile with NGK customers. And oh my gosh, it was so much fun. They absolutely loved the experience. And that's something that they're going to take with them and talk about for the next 10 years is how they got to race on a racetrack and actually compete against us and other race car drivers that NGK sponsors. So come up with ideas like that of how can you bring in their customers or their employees and give them an experience other than just sitting in the pits or sitting in the stands.
I love that, and I can actually mimic or I can agree with how amazing that experience is. I am not a racer, but I did do the driving experience here at Z-Max like 6 years ago.
Okay.
And it's still fresh, like how amazing it was, where I was like, oh my gosh, it was right after it was this time of year, it was right after on like Saturday night or Sunday. It was after the Sunday was done and they set up, and I was like, just hours before, all these amazingly famous drag racing stars were on the track, and here I am on the same track on the same day. It was amazing. So I can imagine what a cool experience that was for those customers.
Yeah, and a lot of them were here earlier this year because we race at Charlotte twice a year. So we did the exact same thing in April when we were here earlier, and there's a lot of them that came back for it because they wanted to try again. But we also had a lot of new guys come, and so it was really cool just to meet them and for them to be able to put a face to the car. And so I'm really excited to do it again next year, and we're just always constantly going back and forth with NGK and our other sponsors of how can we come up with different ideas like that we can bring more of them into the sport.
Well, and I think that is a big key, is just be creative and be outlandish. There's a lot of logistics that went into that, because you had to get permission from the track, from Charlotte Motor Speedway, and this isn't your local airport runway here, so it's kind of a big deal. But somebody had this crazy idea and you made it work. Are there some other crazy ideas you've maybe had over the years?
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind, which isn't a crazy idea, but something very interactive, is that I used to go to high schools and middle schools and bring my race car there. And back then I didn't have this big old thing. I had a smaller car that I could fit in just a small trailer to pull behind our dually. But it was so cool to be able to take it to classrooms, whether it was automotive or anything in STEM, so science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Any of those type of classrooms, all of that relates back into drag racing or any other racing motorsport there is. So going to a classroom, showing how they can use what they're learning in class and applying it to real life, because I remember when I was in school learning math, it's like, I'm never going to use this. So this is a good reason for them to, apply what they're learning, and just for them to be able to sit in the race car. I mean, we didn't start it up, but we brought the race car to the classrooms, and we were able to let the kids sit in it and get a feel for what it's like sitting in a race car. And, it was just so cool to see the smiles on their faces.
Well, and I can see that would be also an opportunity if you have a sponsor that, maybe caters to or has products for those kids, that maybe it's an opportunity to hand out, I don't know, koozies, or like off the top of my head, we don't send koozies to kids, but, something that would be some promo item with the logo on it of your sponsor, and hand that out. And that, that could be adding value to a sponsor too.
Yes, and that's exactly why we did it. So it was with an educational company, and they were targeting K through 12th grade students. And we came up with an activity of where it was just an 11 by 17 printed piece of paper of a flat dragster, and they would be able to cut it out and tape it, fold it together, put some wheels and axles on it, and it would make a 3D dragster. And so we would do some races with that in the classroom, and it was about an hour-long activity of building the race car. And then so they would have their own that they could take home with them. That was a product of that company that was sponsoring us, and then they also got to see the race car.
Oh my gosh, they're going to remember that for a long time. Now, we also talked a little bit, or I know that you do PR for your company, for your race team. You've got the 2 cars, and you put out press releases. Tell me a little bit about your process, because it's a lot. This changed a lot with internet. So talk me a little bit about that process.
Yeah, when I got started, there wasn't social media yet. And so I got started racing when I was 10 years old, and that was 16 years ago. So like I just said, no social media, we just had email. And so whenever, my dad was racing full time, but my sister and I were also racing. And so I was trying to communicate with sponsors, tell them how my dad was doing in his races, tell him how me and my sister were doing. And my mom was doing it before then, but she got sick and tired of it. And so my dad was like, you need to learn something. So he pushed it onto me, which I didn't really know how to write a press release, but I studied what other people did and how, they kind of formatted them, and just copied off of that, and then learned on my own the proper way to write a press release, how to send it out, getting high resolution images. And so, it just started from there, and it even just started with just a paragraph. This is how we did, we qualified this, ran this, ended up winning, or whatever position we ended up in, and sending it out. And that's, like I mentioned before, just to be consistent, and being consistent with that email list. And that's one of the biggest things that sponsors, why they won't renew with a racer, is because, they say they're going to sponsor you, they give you your money, and then you just fall off the face of the earth and never communicate with them and tell them how you do after each race. So that's one of the biggest reasons why we have people like Lucas Oil and NGK Spark Plugs that have been with us for over 20 years, because we've communicated and we've just built really good relationships with them over the years. So like I said, just start with the basics and go from there. So before and after every race, we send out a press release. It goes on our website, and we share that on social media for people to read. But before we put it on our website, we send it out to our newsletter list. And so that's just something that we advertise on social media is, hey, if you sign up to be on our email list, you'll get news faster. And so we've been able to grow the list through that, but we do have a separate list just for sponsors. So we'll send out press releases to sponsors to our email list and then put it on social media and then take as many pictures as we can while we're at the race, or reach out to photographers and buy some images from them, and then post-race press release. Like to do that first thing Monday or Tuesday if we can, and tell them how we qualified, how we ended up, when it will be on TV so they can watch it, or when we're going to post our own videos on YouTube or IGTV, something like that. So.
Well, and you said something important there too, because I do love to support our local photographers, our track photographers. You mentioned if you'll take a lot of your own pictures, but also buy images from the photographers. Say something a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, coming from a graphic design background, and I've done a lot of photography myself, but I'm not very good at it. I'm much better on my phone than I am with a real camera. So I very much respect photographers. I know how hard it is to get good shots, especially with a moving car. And so like I said, if I'm in the car, I cannot take pictures. So maybe I'll have a friend that can take some with me, but for NHRA, you're restricted, so you can only stand behind the car. So you don't really get good sponsor shots like that. So we have to reach out to the track photographers, and they're not going to give away their work for free. You have to purchase the digital files, and they are expensive. It costs a lot more to buy a digital file than just to buy an 8x10 print of it. And but I think it's worth it, because then you get a high resolution image. You can send that on to sponsors, and then they can put that image in a printed advertisement or wherever they want to use it. So with each sponsor, we tell them that you have all the rights to all of the images that we send to you. You are able to use them to promote your company however you want to. And I think that's something really important that people, they may not see the value of that investment, but even though it's taking money out of their pocket, you're getting more exposure elsewhere wherever that sponsor uses that photo.
Well, and it's taking one piece and moving it and having it in all of these different spots.
Yeah.
So you're really getting maximum value. This isn't a prom dress that you wear once. This is this is that little red black dress that we get to wear 100 times in 100 different ways, kind of thing. Any other tips that you would have for racers?
The biggest thing is just to do your research about a company that you want to sponsor you. And, if there's a reason why you want them to sponsor you, show them that. Show them, why you love their product, how you use it every day, how you use it when you're at the racetrack, whether it's one inside of the racing industry or outside of the racing industry. Like we have Dots Pretzels, that was completely outside of racing. But because we have a partnership with Menards, we were able to build that together with them. So be consistent, do your research, always try to be creative, come up with different ways that you can market yourself and your sponsors, and just have fun with it. Don't get too stressed out about it.
That's great. Thank you so much for taking the time with me today, Megan. I know you're getting ready for qualifying, and I just wish you, I hope you have a fabulous weekend, and also good luck in the points championship.
Thank you so much.
If you're interested in learning more about marketing and sponsorship for your race team, go ahead and visit us online at winningmotorsportsmarketing.com.